Right, I'm going to talk to you about servicing a tench regulator. I don't fit these anymore, but I've obviously fitted some in the past, and people have had them fitted by other people. And what sometimes happens is, after some time, the O-rings degrade, as all O-rings do, and you might notice that you start getting a very slow leak from the little breather hole. You know, when this is in the cylinder, there's a tiny little, you can see a little hole there. Get air leaking out of that or somewhere else. It may be a sign that the O-rings are, perished or need to be replaced. So what you need to do is obviously make sure your rifle's safe, drain down all the air by dry firing. Once you're happy that the rifle's clear, safe and empty of air, you can just unscrew the air cylinder. It should just be hand tight. Literally just unscrew it. There is a video on my YouTube channel that shows you how to remove the air cylinder if you're not sure. And then this will either come off with the cylinder, or it'll stay on the action. You basically want to unscrew this. When you're unscrewing it, just make sure you don't touch or adjust this brass nut. I'll explain why in a minute. But basically remove the regulator, and once you've got it out the way, get the action and everything else out the way. Then what you want to do is get something, either this is a scriber or some other a pin or whatever else, and pick a spot and put a mark on the brass nut, and then put a corresponding mark on the body of the regulator. In the same line. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see that, but basically I put a line there and I put a line there, and they line up. Now the reason for that is this brass nut actually adjusts the regulator pressure. If you do strip it and put it back together, and you happen to put this back, say there, the regulator pressure is going to be lower, and obviously the rifle's not going to perform as well as it should. So basically, the other thing you can do is also, you could, if you've got access to a vernier or something similar, you could also measure the height. See there, it's 4.21 millimeters. I'm not sure if you can see that. And then if you screw it back together, make sure it's the same again. It's not always going to be 4.21, by the way. I'm just on this particular one, that's what it was. Right, once you're happy that you know that you can put this back where it was, then you can proceed to the next step, which is to remove this. If it's more than hand tight, you can just use an adjustable, or I believe it's a 16mm spanner. There we go. Yep, it's a 16mm spanner, so that shouldn't be a problem. Right, and you'll notice on here there is an O-ring. So you want to remove that. I just use I think this is a pick, something that's not going to scratch the brass. Hook it under the O-ring and just remove the O-ring. There we go. And then I've started selling a little kit on my e-shop with O-rings for the tench regulator and various other regulators, so that you can do your own servicing. Right. Make sure you put that one out the way so there's no confusion. There's the new set of O-rings. Just match up the closest one you can, and then pop that on. It'll be a good idea to clean everything as well at the same time, and I highly recommend a drop of Abbey SM50 gun lube, not gun oil or anything else. It needs to be the gun lube, which doesn't eat O-rings. You could use a bit of silicone, and there are some other products which are very good for O-rings. Right, in here there is a little plastic disc. I would say leave it alone, and if it comes out when you strip the regulator, pop it back in. You'll see there's a little mark where it's been squashed into this brass body. Put it back so that the mark is facing the brass. Just that way it'll go back in the same way, and if all being well, it should be at the correct pressure once you've put it all back in. Right, now there's a piston in here, which at this stage is just being held in by the O-ring. Push it out. Right, there we go. Now make a note of the springs. Most of them in sub 12 foot-pound have 3 springs facing one way, 3 springs facing the other way. You can take them off, you don't have to take them off, but if you do, at least you know where to put them back. I'm not going to change all these O-rings because it's basically just a repeat, but basically pick that one off, put the corresponding one from the pack on there, pick that one off, put the corresponding one from the pack on. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th O-ring, the biggest one, goes on the body. I'll do that one. There we go. Take that off, put the new one on, again clean it, put a drop of SM50 or something suitable on, and then right, now we are ready to put this back together. Push that in, it just holds in with the O-ring. Make sure the little plastic bit is inside the brass body there, and then screw that on. I'm doing it upside down so that the plastic disc doesn't fall out. And then basically what we want to do is screw this in all the way until we get our marks lining up again that we put on before we started. And I believe that is right there. And just to double check, I'm just going to measure it. There you go. Pretty much the same. So there we go, that's serviced. Screw that back onto the action, and then screw the cylinder on, fill it up. Don't forget to cock your rifle before you fill it, otherwise it might not fill. And if all's gone well, it should be roughly around the same setting as it was before you stripped it. Obviously check your power with the chronograph to make sure that the power hasn't changed, because you know, if you've gone a little bit further, you've dropped the regulator pressure. If you've gone not far enough, then the regulator pressure will be higher, so it may have an effect on your power. And it's always a good idea to test the power of your rifle regularly anyway, especially after doing any modifications to your rifle or any servicing, because small changes on the rifle can make a difference to the power. There we go.